I wanted to have a sense of place. I wanted to create a sense of home. I wanted to have a sense of community. I wanted to be able to do projects that were different from the run-of-the-mill. That's how this thing started.
You know, you discovered this place, and what spoke to you about it? How it informed what the creation of the Institute and your vision for supporting artists?
I think for me, it begins with a sense of loss, because I grew up in Los Angeles. When I was a kid, there were spaces in between the various communities of Santa Monica, Beverly Hills, Hollywood, spaces of green. So I loved it. And then when the war ended, that city that I loved began to change, because when all the money came back into our economy, suddenly there was pavement and skyscrapers, and it felt like the city that I love was sort of being slowly pushed into the sea. So I wanted out. So that sense of place that I came to realize later on was so important, I went in search for. I would drive back and forth from Colorado to California. I've come through Utah, and I heard all these weird stories about Utah. You want to stay out of there? And I thought, really? And instead, what I found out was that this was an incredibly beautiful state. And I found 2 acres since 1961. And to me, it was a home. When the Institute started in 1980, suddenly I was putting together 2 things: place and community. Storytelling needs a sense of place. I think it begins with a sense of place. And I would hope that this place here, which is in pure nature, might have some positive effects on their storytelling.
Action.
The moment I stepped foot at Sundance, I felt that incredible spirit of creativity and a sense of community and a family, you know, of creators, and that sort of sense of generosity.
When we had the idea of having a process that would have mentoring, I realized we had no money. And when I had to ask the various mentors who would come in, experienced film people, I said to these guys, would you come and give of your time? And if you remember, we all started somewhere, and we would have loved to have had a helping hand. Can't you give of your time for that?
So how are you going to tell the audience that she's seen it from there?
I'm not sure. We're not sure that it will work.
It's a problem.
Doesn't it feel good to be generous? Doesn't it feel good to create something that gives somebody else an opportunity they may not have? Just the replay it's kind of a reward, is when you see somebody develop. And maybe what you might get is just being challenged by the new voices themselves. Just talking to each other, you might discover stuff. And I don't believe any of us are too successful or too accomplished ever to not be able to learn something new. The more humble you can stay, the more likely the process will remain okay. Humility and generosity, to me, kind of go together. So that turned out to be true. And I think that's one of the reasons the lab has succeeded. Once it got sustained, then we could look at how it was it producing what we had hoped? Well, it was producing in terms that we were developing the skills of the artists, but that's when we realized there's no place for them to go, because the mainstream was not allowing that space. That led to the idea of a festival. So at least they would gather once a year, look at each other's work, and maybe if we were lucky, somebody else would come, okay? Well, after 5, 6 years, somebody did come. So as that started to grow, he said, okay, that's gonna sustain itself. Right around that time, globalization occurred. So that created another opportunity. Now we can go international. Then suddenly, we were able to create film as a cultural exchange. At the same time, when I saw the festival was only 10 days in Park City in the middle of winter, I said, well, this should go beyond. How do you do that? Well, electronically, so you start a Sundance channel. So the whole thing has been slowly expanding according to changing times. Yes, there was risk-taking. I've done that much of my life, but I've gained a lot.
Yeah, you know, when you talk about as your vision, a vision around, you know, sort of risk-taking and the idea that failure is part of a process, you brought that to the lab, and that is so rare. Your vision of a process, you know, sort of existed nowhere, and it's become a model.
And it's nice to hear people saying, oh, you had a vision. You create. Well, I think it was, I don't know that I saw that as much as it was just a personal thing. It's something that I wanted. Yeah. I wanted to create this thing, I guess, for myself and for other people if they wanted.
Yeah,
Not
but
everyone does.
that's the vision.
Yeah.